Welcome to the We're Not Blowing Hot Air podcast, powered by Oxygen Plus. This season, we're all about the newest proven wellness hacks that'll help you think, feel, and perform your best.
Absolutely. Living longer and healthier isn't a far-off dream with the easy, actionable ways that we will learn today.
Let's start training for the game of life with this episode's special guest on We're Not Blowing Hot Air.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you.
Great.
Welcome to this episode of We're Not Blowing Hot Air. Today, we are here with Dr. Jordan Shilts. Jordan. I am very excited to have you guys hear from Jordan today. I was actually introduced to Jordan by Lauren. So I'm going to go ahead and have Lauren introduce Jordan, but we're excited to talk to him today.
Yeah, well, thanks, Robert.
Sure.
And it's great to have you here, too.
Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast as my new co-host. I'm really excited because, Dr. Jordan, you have a degree in chiropractic with an emphasis in functional medicine. You have a wellness clinic in Edina, Minnesota, not too far from where the O+ headquarters is located. And it offers an incredible milieu of services at Statera. Statera?
Yep.
Dr. Jordan?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. Statera. It's a little early this morning. I'm going to have my coffee with us today. But you offer hyperbaric oxygen, LED light therapy, functional medicine, biomarker lab tests, and chiropractic wellness. So a lot of things. I know that some of your clients, so you can't obviously reveal names. You service professional athletes that are local to Minnesota of all kinds, as well as people who are just interested in wellness or also maybe struggling with some major health issues. And so without further ado, I just would love for you to really have this opportunity to talk about the topic of lifespan versus health span and what that means. Well, those terms are maybe kind of new or nuanced at best in today's world. And so can you share with us more about who you are in the context of like how you know and understand lifespan and health span?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm so glad that this came to fruition. Like I said, our offices are so close, so it's been really cool to have the conversations that we've had. You know, I think if we could have easily recorded them and been on like episode 3 by now. They've been just a lot of joy with that. But yeah, just a little bit of background about myself. I'm just super passionate in the field of personalized health and where healthcare is going. I think it really gives individuals the accessibility to just create health instead of manage disease. And that's something that I've always really been interested in, again, with where the trajectory is heading. So my background is in chiropractic. I graduated from Northwestern Chiropractic in 2019. Early on in my journey, I was really exposed to functional medicine. And what that means as a definition, we can kind of get into that a little bit later, but it's really about the creation of health, again, and looking at things from that perspective as opposed to kind of the wait and see model of managing disease and managing symptoms. So thankfully, again, I was able to be exposed to that early on in my chiropractic journey and had a bunch of really good mentors in the space who kind of really accelerated the process and really shortened the gap in what I wanted to do following graduation. Now, of course, we're probably all familiar with biohacking also. There's all these different tools and hacks and technologies that you can do to really support your body and in its innate intelligence. And I thought, what a cool idea to bridge functional medicine with some of these biohacking tools so that we can really accelerate healing and see faster and more efficient outcomes. So that kind of really led to the creation of Statera Health. Myself and my co-founder, Dr. Jaron Faber, we actually lived together throughout chiropractic school. So we had all this time to really come together and create a really cool model, which is Statera Health. So that's how I came in contact with Lauren, and it's been just some really cool conversations ever since.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Jordan. So I know one of the first topics that we talked about in person and had a really long conversation about, a really interesting conversation, a topic I've never actually even heard of, which was lifespan versus health span.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah, I mean, people are starting to live longer, right? Just because of technology, science, the medical community, people are starting to live a little bit longer, but are people really questioning the quality of that life as they get older?
Yeah.
And I know that the medical community in the past has always looked at the length of somebody's life as kind of the measurement, right? Versus the actual quality of the life that they're having as they're growing older. So, Dr. Jordan, can you describe to us, what is lifespan versus the actual definition of health span?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really the emergence of healthcare 2.0 as opposed to this early age thinking or early day thinking of healthcare 1.0. And this is largely the framework that I've taken from a mentor of mine who I haven't actually met, but I'm sure your audience is really familiar with, and that's Dr. Peter Attia. He really talks about
Oh,
this in
right.
a really elegant manner. But if we think about health span and lifespan, the easiest way to think about this is on a graph. So, health span being on the y axis, a little bit more about the quality of life, and lifespan on the x axis, pretty easy to understand, is the amount of years that you have. So, the goal on this is to maximize the amount of health span for the amount of years that we are alive. Lifespan is a little bit more about delaying the onset of chronic disease too. So, like you're talking about, as new emerging technologies come about, a lot of people don't necessarily want to live longer, but they certainly want to live better. So that's really what we try to optimize in our clinic, and really what we're hoping to kind of jump on this new bandwagon for healthcare 2.0. So when we
No,
think
Dr.
about
Jordan, I was just going to say, in my experience with like talking with people, especially like older people, I've heard it said that they don't want to necessarily live long because they just really want to feel good when they're alive. And so I think like when I first heard and started knowing more about what functional medicine offers, or personalized medicine, and just a wellness model on top of, and healthy living on top of all the other services that like medical medicine, traditional Western medicine offers. And like I started to see like, oh, the message I started in like resonating in my heart was like, you don't have to have one or the other now. Like, even if you're in your older age, there's still a lot of things you can do to have that that health span on top of the remaining lifespan, and like, I just think like I think that's just an important thing to like kind of understand, like whether we're young or old, like true, we can do things to make our health span, how we feel, better, kind of irregardless of the lifespan that we have left.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when we think about the characteristics of what makes a good quality of life, you have to think about things of, freedom of pain and movements, cognition and brain health, your sense of purpose, your connection to family, friends, and your community, and lastly, your emotional tolerance to stress. And I guess the general consensus when you're thinking about living longer, those things aren't really taken into account, because at the age of around 70 or 80, those things dramatically start to fall off hand. So who would want to, extend lifespan at the expense of not having some of those characteristics? So our entire model, or, again, the emergence of healthcare 2.0, is how can we shift that graph so we can maximize health span later on into our later years. So we are doing things like creating memories and experiences with future generations, and doing what we love later on in life. That's really the goal of what I believe to be true healthcare, and I think what more and more people are starting to be open to.
And I think one of the important things that we talked about yesterday, Jordan, that Lauren might not have heard when we were discussing kind of the calculation that you were doing about, as we progress, into the future and technologies progress, for every year that technology goes forward, us as human beings tend to live a certain amount longer, right? And that's just kind of something saying, look, guys, it is true. We are, just because we're part of this modern, day, we're going to live longer. So we need to make sure that as we live longer, we're able to, do activities with our grandkids, be able to pick up these, different things and be able to work out and maybe ski and still do some things as we're older. Can you remind me of what that kind of calculation was, Jordan?
Yeah, so that's a quote, or actually a stat from David Sinclair. They're just kind of like forecasting based off of where technology is heading in the future and all the things that we're likely going to have access to in the context of more preventative technologies, better just better understandings of our health and more efficient treatments. It's naturally just going to increase the amount of lifespan that we have. I think you and I did the calculations. Again, I'm not a huge math guy, but if you are living, or if you're expecting to live about 50 years longer, every month that you stay alive, you can add about an extra week to the end of your life. And I think we totaled that up over 50 years. What was it, like 12 and a half years is what that comes to?
Yep.
So
significant.
That was, yeah, pretty significant.
And that's,
but again, just to kind of reiterate,
if you do what? Well, how can I get those extra weeks for every month, or the extra week for every month?
That's just staying alive with where the trajectory of medical technology and future advancements are heading. But
okay, so not necessarily the health part, just the life part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think naturally, as a byproduct of increasing your health span, doing things for your movement, doing things for your brain health, your sense of purpose, really tapping into these things, as a byproduct, you're naturally going to be, extending lifespan on top of that too.
Sure.
Okay. I know that like there's like an age we have that is our biological age, and then there's an age we have that's like this internal biomarker. Can you tell me, how does that play into what you're talking about right now, and how are functional medicine doctors or other people in wellness using that measurement?
Yeah, so that's such a great point. I believe you just had yours ran, right?
I'm about to. I can't wait. I'm going to be like 15.
I'm scared too.
No, that's the kind of thing. This podcast is for you, Robert.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you're that old person I was talking about.
I am.
Well, that's one of those cool advances in medicine and healthcare that we're talking about, and the accessibility to tests in these biomarkers that we can use to get a better metric or gauge of how efficient we are aging. And the biological age is a really unique tool. It's we're all familiar with the chronological age and how old we are, but some people, I have the liberty of, in a clinical practice, I can have a 60-year-old walk in and they can look 20 years younger, or they can look 20 years older. And so that's kind of where this biological age, this new marker, is really cool, because it can see the true biological age of your cells versus the age you are. So you can kind of use that as a reference point to understand, hey, are the things that I'm doing in my life beneficial to that biological age, or am I actually set back, and what can we do to shift that in the right direction?
So what is the chronological age? How does it like compare? Is it just how do they determine what would make that the health of the chronological age, so they're able to compare it to the biological?
Yeah, so it's kind of a whole other conversation, but there's this thing called methylation, and what it does is it regulates the communication of the cells, or I guess like the efficiency of their communication, and when genes are turned on and when genes are turned off. So they kind of use that as a marker. Currently, it's pretty expensive to run, but I know the guys behind the scenes are working to make this super accessible. So again, if there is one marker that you can use to, say, hey, what did this week of fasting, or what did this, protocol do for me, you can really see a before and after on how it shifts that biological age, which is going to be really,
Okay.
really cool.
Okay, and like, but is there a goal set for like, okay, you need to be like 25% younger than your chronological age and your biological
Oh,
marker?
that I am not familiar with. I don't know. I
Hmm.
know there's a rate of aging, and you want that to be below 1. So, for example, if you're, you want your biological age to be less than the rate of your chronological age. So every 365 days, which would be a year, if you're biologically you're aging only 300 days, you're going to have a positive um, kind of trajectory on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I like the idea of the test, even though it's scary to me, I like the idea of it because I think a test like that kind of gives you a kick in the pants that you need. If for me, for example, I just turned 40 this year. So if I came into Dr. Jordan and he told me that I'm aging like a 65-year-old, I think that would give me a kick in the
Yeah.
pants to really change some habits in my life, which I think a lot of us need, right? That a lot of us that aren't going to we may be going to a clinical doctor or just our normal physician, and like Dr. Jordan and I talked about, you may be going in and saying I have a cold, and they'll give you some medicine and you get past the cold, versus actually kind of finding some things in advance that I could go ahead and change that would really help my health span and most likely my lifespan. So I think it's a cool test and a good idea for anybody who kind of needs that extra push to go out and make some lifestyle changes.
Yeah, the fear of bad news is something that'll always be present. And,
Right.
hey, should I get this this health test performed on me? But that's really the differentiator too between functional medicine and traditional medicine. Traditional
Right.
medicine, some of my favorite patients on a yearly basis. I guess we don't say that we have favorite patients, but in the ideal patient, what's happening is they're going to Mayo, they're getting the executive physical, which is running all these tests and lab procedures to rule out different pathologies, right? But if some of those tests come back normal and you still have symptoms, that's really where functional medicine and kind of this whole framework of healthcare 2.0 comes into play, because it's all about how can we optimize your well-being to be able to do the things that you want to do as later on as late on as you can in life.
Yep, for sure.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for explaining that. What are some of the things we can do to increase our health span? We've done the
Yeah,
Mayo
that's
Clinic executive physical, or wherever we go. We've done all the tests in the traditional medical because we're feeling a little off or majorly off. And then we get to a clinic like yours. What happens next? What do you offer? Like, what are the things you can do or refer out to so we can do?
Well, I think the first and most important thing is understanding the why behind why do you want to be doing these things, whether that's understanding your sense of purpose, understanding what you want to do later on in life, and really training for the game of life. A lot of us, early on in our adolescent sports days, it was all about, well, of course, like I'm in football season, so I'm training for, X position for this season. But in the game of life, what you're really training for is how can I be the most badass and capable, 90-year-old or 100-year-old? And then what you do is just reverse engineer that by decade. So you're saying, hey, what are the things that, a 60-year-old or a 70-year-old needs to be doing? And how can I be achieving those things? So that way I can do the things that I love. And for me, this is skiing, golf, travel and adventure with my love, and of course, playing with future generations. So, what are the things that I need to be doing right now that set me up on the path to being able to do that when I'm 90?
Now, Dr.
Um,
Jordan, what about, and I know I've asked you this in the past, but, what about just, somebody that doesn't necessarily even come into the clinic? Like, what can somebody like me on a regular basis do to really help, increase my health span? Just even if they're little things, little changes that I might be able to incorporate in my life that will really help.
Sure. And this is all about the framework of kind of how we take our clinics through, or just the general thinking. Again, once you define that goal, then you can create a better framework I guess clinically speaking, I can go off that. We really like to see, a lot of objective labs. Of course, we have their goals of where they want to do. And then we pair that with a really detailed health intake so we can get a really good idea of where the individual is and where they want to go. And then we just, to answer your question, kind of go through categorically. All right, what are some things that we can do to increase our brain health, our gut health, our sleep, our exercise and nutrition, all these different categories and really like tactical approaches that we can help to optimize. And of course, there's a myriad of those things, right? But it all comes down to individually what suits you. And that is largely the art of what we do clinically.
Sure.
How about like a rapid fire question? Like I'll say the condition and you say one thing that I could do either in the clinic or off. All right.
Sure.
Like, okay. Sleep better.
Sleep better. Trying to decrease the temperature in your room. There's a lot of different studies on temperature and how that affects the onset of sleep. So I always think about, all right, do you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep? And if it does come down to falling asleep, then typically what you can do to really influence falling into sleep is playing with temperature. So whether that's a late night sauna, a late warm bath, that way you're elevating your body temperature, and then maybe you can set the thermostat in your bedroom to a little bit lower, and that way you're kind of dipping into sleep a little bit faster.
Interesting.
Awesome. I have a chili pad on my bed, which makes it cold,
There you
like
go.
60 degrees. And then it actually turns
Yeah.
on heat. You can program it to warm you as you wake.
Nice.
So it's like
Yeah.
really smooth and sick. Okay. How about, what was the one another ailment?
Let's say, is there anything that you can do for, let's say like chronic headaches, Jordan?
Nice.
Like maybe migraines, chronic headaches, maybe even like stress headaches, things of that nature?
Sure. Little like multifactorial with that one. Let's go next one.
You're skipping that one?
Yeah, we'll
On the
skip that one.
headaches? Okay.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, I mean, what I do, I think the stress thing is what you
Yeah,
said.
stress for sure.
So
Like,
Okay.
for me, it's like exercise, walking, like something physical, like that, like really automatically like drops my cortisol, like lowers like my homocysteine. Am I using right words, Dr. Jordan? Does that work?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
it just calms me, right? And then I like, but I
Yeah.
put some physical exertion, like rowing, I kind of do to help
Mhm.
lower my stress sometimes.
yeah.
Or walk my dog. How about you?
For me, it's really kind of, it's interesting. It's sitting down and playing with my daughter and kind of just,
Yeah.
having that kind of innocence and way that she looks at the world just kind of calms me down a little bit.
That's awesome.
So maybe even just something like that.
Family, community. That goes back to what you were saying earlier. All right.
Yeah, that's spot
How
on.
about like, I'm just like, just, I don't really love like eating all the time. Like, I don't have like enough enjoyment with my food. Is that a thing people come into ever with?
Yeah, a little bit. It's more on the like the emotionality side of things. We actually work with a psychologist and pass them along to, really work on their mindset or emotional stress tolerance, because that largely plays into, the whole goal of increasing just a lot. I mean, that ties into everything. It allows the individual to get hope, kind of get out of their head, kind of change up the stories that they're telling themselves or some of the strategies that they've been doing that just haven't been successful.
Okay.
So,
Right,
Dr.
cool.
Jordan, I think, a lot of this is leading, and I'm sure as guests, you guys are wondering too, I've asked you this in the past, and I'm sure it's objective as well, but what is more important, do you think, in your opinion? Is it longevity of life or lifespan, or is it health span, which is, of course, what we talked about, quality of life? I think, for me, the more important part would be to spend really good years with the people I love versus kind of just being this, old person that has to get moved around by people and, can't really communicate, can't really do things. I think for me, it would be really important to just have those really good years with the people I love and be able to perform my best. But some other people, like we talked about yesterday, Jordan, that a lot of the older generations would say, my goal is to live to 100, but there's nothing mentioned in there about being 100 and being well.
Right. Like, so first of all, I wonder, like, etymology, where's the bifurcation of this happened? Like, in thinking about aging and like how we have kind of accepted that when we grow old, we get sick.
Right.
Like, where did that mindset first creep into our world? And then, like, really where in this more modern era of healthcare 2.0 has like this new idea of like being able to live longer and healthier kind of took root. And then also, like, what separates, like, in the clients that you work with, what do you see as like kind of, is there one or two like predominating factors that kind of separate the crowd?
Yeah, well, to answer your question first, Robert, it's really a delicate balance and delicate dance between the two with health span and lifespan. And that's really the art and the science of it too, right? Because, of course, you hear all of these different wellness gurus talking about, the 20 different things that you need to be doing before 10 a.m. to live the most optimal life. Well, obviously, not only is that sustainable, but it's probably more stressful. So the goal of this is to kind of meet the patient's interest with also, their goals. So we can create a personalized strategy towards what it does look like to live to 90 and being the most capable you can with the context of mind and body.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of interesting to a quote off this: a healthy person wants 10,000 things, but a sick person just wants one. So I think that really speaks to the health span side of things, and again, just being as capable as you can later in life to create those rich memories and experiences that really make life what it is.
Yeah, that's a hard-hitting thing I've never heard before, that a healthy person wants 1,000 things, but the sick person just wants to feel well. I've never even actually thought about it that way, but that's an interesting take.
Or to stay sick.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what is that one thing? Is it inferred that it's to be healthy, the sick person?
To get better, yeah.
It
yeah.
is.
If
Okay,
you've ever
all
thought
right,
about,
I'm a
the
pessimist.
last time you were sick on the couch, you're like, oh, I just want to feel
Yeah.
better. I just want to get back to
Yeah.
my daily routine.
I guess, but that's because I'm like, I try to be more, I lean into the healthy realm, like I do think there are people who are so sick and they don't know that they don't need to be, that there's actually like options out there to like work through that all and get better. And so I don't know, but okay. So then can you answer my questions too? I'll just remind you, it was kind of about the historical, like, where did this come from? This like aging and the acceptance that when we grow old, we may not feel well. And then contrary, like this newer healthcare 2.0 kind of modality, what happened in discovery and in science to kind of bring us here?
Well, I think a critical part of thinking about this is how do we prolong the diseases that we're likely to die from? And that being cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative disease, cancer, and then of course you got a whole list of other things like accidental deaths and chronic disease and so forth. But if we think about those, that's where we can really get into clinically the personalized model and the biochemistry and all these different chemical makeups that we can kind of assess and see where you are from a lab perspective and from an objective perspective. Are you heading down this way? And that's really where the early detection and just getting comprehensive labs has really been a big, I guess, early, how do I say this, it's been a way to intervene more efficiently kind of earlier on in life. And again, so instead of this wait and see model, we're able to identify these things earlier on and address them at the source. Again, not waiting for symptoms to arrive, but just seeing that we're maybe not heading down this right path, and how can we intervene?
Gives you a little bit of a chance to be proactive, huh?
Yes. Probably the best way to summarize that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, one of the questions that I've had kind of outstanding is, what to you, Dr. Jordan, is the best age to kind of start something like this? Because for me now at 40, I'm just kind of learning about these things. And it was just from speaking to you that, we had the ability to do all of these things before I thought of it as something that just like somebody like Bill Gates does, right? Or somebody like Jeff Bezos who can, go and do hyperbaric oxygen and go do all of these things and sleep in a hyperbaric chamber. And
yeah, Tiger Woods has one in his home.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, like things like that, that are kind of out of the realm for me to be able to do. What is like kind of the optimum age to start looking at these types of things? Is it when you're in your teens? Is it when you're in your 20s? Is it, if you started when you were 10, is it too early to be able to tell anything? Like, what's the ideal time to start looking into these things?
Yeah, well, I think it all comes down to just your kind of your relationship with that goal and what that looks like. And it is always changing, right? But I mean, as early as possible, we all have these kind of benchmarks and milestones that we look to achieve, and how do we get there in the most optimal and efficient way? But yeah, I guess as early on as you can.
Sure.
So is the theoretical goal to pick like how long you want to live, and then kind of in a generic way, or is it more like I want to be doing something while I'm older? Like which is more of like a successful goal in your opinion?
Probably the second one, because again, once we figure out what it is you want to be doing, then we can kind of use that. I think right now, so the average life expectancy for a female outweighs males. I think it's like 82 and a half years. And Robert, you and I are around 80 or 79, something like that.
We're catching up.
If we are, yeah. But so if we add on those 12 extra years that we might be able to get with a little bit of assistance from technology, is kind of around 90. So what do we want to be doing around 90? And then again, just kind of reverse engineer it from there.
Okay, so it really is important then that we look at like what we enjoy, our passions. What like it kind of starts. It's interesting. I didn't expect that to be where you would lead a client to go first. Like it's very like it's deep, it's spiritual, it's emotional. Like it might even be like the physical might have even been a barrier for a person to have those things in their lives in the past. So like how do you see most people get to that place of envisioning that life for them themselves in the future?
Yeah, you really got to take the kind of the emotional set points and really really hammer down on those, because they always talk about we spend our early days accumulating wealth at the expense of our health. And then we spend, I think this is Warren Buffett who talks this. I'm massively butchering this, but then he talks about in our later years, then we spend all of our wealth to make up for our health, right? So when we have, ideally in retirement, we want to be as able and capable as we can to be able to maybe create a new sense of purpose, create a new career path, connect with our community as most as we can. And if we don't have an able and capable mind and body to do that, then it's going to be a difficult path.
Well, I don't know about you, Lauren, but I can tell you for sure, Dr. Jordan, if I was walking into a doctor's office and the doctor actually said to me, what do you want to be doing when you're 80? and something like that versus, hey, what am I seeing you for today?
What are your symptoms?
What are your symptoms? How do you feel? You're feeling bad. How can I fix you now? Versus, continue your health into the future. It would be so nice for somebody to say, what's your goal? Do you want to live to be 90 and still be going off ski jumps? Or do you want to, it would just be so refreshing to hear it kind of placed in that way versus, somebody just saying, we're just going to heal you, or even if we can heal you today for this one issue, and then you're going to move on and we'll see you maybe in another year when you're feeling something else, right? Like it would be so refreshing to just know that kind of I could control those goals a little bit as much as I could, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to, when we were younger, we always had something that we were competing for, and that made it a lot more motivated to see the goal and, you know, kind of journey along to achieve that. So if we can use that in the framework of the game of life, what is it that we want to achieve later on, and
Right.
what are the things that we can be doing to address that? And again, it's just going to be, I'm so optimistic for the future with the accessibility that everyone is going to be able to have to, you know, run markers on their tests or run biomarkers about their health in a very accessible and cost effective way. You know, there's so much low hanging fruit that you can do now that you really didn't have a whole lot of access to. I know Lauren and I wear the Aura ring, so every night we're tracking our sleep. Such a big aspect. And yeah, just there's so much free information out there too. That's really going to impact things in a positive way. I mean, we have AI chatbots right now that can pass the bar exam. You know, so there's a lot of optimism for what that's going to do with healthcare, and again, just creating more accessibility through cost effectiveness and all of that.
Yeah, it is a lot about research, you know, like, could you what was the book that I recently read that inspired you to start your clinic?
Yeah, so that is called Lifespan. It's all
Okay.
about why we age and why we don't have to. It's a pretty bold title, but it brings upon the fact that there's really no genes or genetics that are instructing our cells that we have to age. It's really, again, a breakdown in a micro breakdown of these cells that lose their communication over time and become just less efficient, which leads to the development of disease and dysfunction over time.
Yeah, yeah. And so I would recommend that book to our listeners. What was the name of the author? Dr. Jordan, do you
David
remember?
Sinclair, he's
Thank you.
the head genetic, uh, the head of the genetics lab at Harvard. Really, really good.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal book. I could read it. Disclaimer, I did read it whilst in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. So like my brain was like alert, and I was like, it's the best place to read legal documents or a medical book is in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. But what I liked in the book was, like, you know, even if you can't do like cryogenics.
Yep.
You know, like you can walk outside on a cold day in Minnesota in your t-shirt, and some of the same the health benefits, if you're out there for like 10, even 5 minutes, like the telomeres can be extended, right? Which is one of those ways to, like, that on the cellular level that you can increase your lifespan. Can you just, like, is that, like, first of all, did I say that correctly, or could you kind of say that better and expand on that, Jordan?
Sure. So he's identified the 9 hallmarks of aging, and they're all kind of these characteristics of how the cell is becoming dysfunctional. Again, kind of from not only a micro level, but also a macro level. And, you know, what are some interventions that we can do to really target each individual framework in a really strategic manner? So that's not only what I'm super interested in clinically, but I'm also very optimistic for that to just trickle down into the general public and just be common knowledge about, you know, how we go about our day, how we go about our health. And this kind of just summarizes the whole conversation of what are the kind of easy things that I can do to maximize my quality of life for as long as I can.
I remember from the book that another one, in addition to like cold exposure, is and helping the telomeres, is having a time where you do like a fast of some type. It could be like shortening the windows during the day where you eat. So it's like you eat like 6 hours a day and then you're off the others, or like you take 1 day a week, or maybe it's like a few days or 2 days out of a month, or whatever it is for the person. It's like really needs to be based on like the nutritionist and their doctors, like how they do it. But the benefits, especially shown in a lot of mice and maybe rat studies, but like that, it just shows that, like, even like no matter, even if you eat junk food, if you manage the window of when you eat, that's another one of those markers, those 9 markers. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's starting to be kind of a new age understanding of when we eat might be more important than what we eat.
Yeah.
But if you take a step back and just think about, the innate intelligence of the body, kind of the entire purpose of fasting is that we give, we're optimizing for energy conservation because we're not receiving food and receiving, the energy that food contains. So your body has to go search for energy within it. And what it's going to do in a very intelligent manner is recycle those old and dysfunctional cells that are starting to age inappropriately or just kind of behave inappropriately. And it's going to use those for energy. So, of course, once you don't have those anymore, once they're recycled, then you're not going to be having the dysfunction that they were, or the chaos that they were creating. So yeah,
Interesting.
fasting it's a great tool. Of course, everybody wants to talk about the what, like, hey, just tell me what to do. What's this, what's that, cryotherapy, hyperbarics, all these really cool things. But really the art of that is, again, matching it to the interest level of the individual and kind of mapping out the strategic plan that can not only be interesting, but also sustainable throughout their life.
Well, that's amazing. I want to ask you if there's anything else you want to share with our listeners, and or would you share what your personal goals are in your future, either for your clinic at Statera Health or in your own world? Like, what do you want to offer and give this world with your goals, Dr. Jordan?
Yeah, well, I'm super optimistic, if you can't tell, about where personalized health is heading, and all the tools and strategies that you can take advantage of out there to really create health instead of this wait and see model of, and then hopping into the management of disease. So we're really big on measuring at Statera, getting really a framework and a map of where you currently are. And again, pairing that to the goals of where you want to go. And we just have a lot of fun in the process. So that's kind of where I'm at in my own journey too, and just learning more about myself and what I want to achieve.
Well, I think you're making a brighter, obviously healthier world. So thank you for your time and for what you're doing and for sharing what you're doing on the podcast with us today. Do you want to?
Yeah. Dr. Jordan, I appreciate for sure, you kind of breaking some of these things down for me. I obviously don't have as much of a medical background as you and Lauren.
Oh,
well, Lauren, you know the terms and you can,
but I don't even know how to say them.
For me, it was a really interesting, engagement with you to be able to discover these things that I can do, even in my regular day, life, and also learning about some of these new concepts and things that I should be looking for. So I would recommend to anybody out there that's listening, and also for you to recommend to go, even if it's not Statera Health, to go get these things checked out and to really look into these types of things. And, it's really going to help us in the future be able to live a healthier, better life. So Dr. Jordan, I appreciate the way that you can break some of these things down to people that are very complicated subjects. But in speaking to you, I don't feel like it's overwhelming, right? You do a really good job of breaking it down and making it achievable and obtainable, which I really do appreciate. So thank you for that, Doctor. And is there anything else you'd like to tell our guests before we go? And like I said, we appreciate you being here, and I will always be looking to you in the future for my future health.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. I guess the end touch point is that, the creation of health and healthcare in general does not need to be complicated. My goal is not to be a wellness guru that needs to, that is trying to tell you to do all the things that you're not. It's really about to bring back the true meaning of doctor, and that is teacher. And our goal is really to remove these barriers and to really educate yourself to become, kind of your own doctor in a sense, and really maximize these characteristics that we talked about that lead to a really fulfilling life.
Nice. Well put. I think, it's important to be your own advocate, especially in a lot of these things. You have to be the person that's kind of taking action. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Jordan, tell our listeners where they can learn more about Statera and anything else that you're engaged with and want them to learn about online or on social media.
So our social is Statera Health _Edina. And then we post a lot of updates there, a lot of what we're doing. And then our website, you can find out a little bit more information about the therapies that we have and a little bit more about some programs that we do at officialstatera.com.
Awesome. And we'll put all those links in the episode notes. Dr. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on our first episode of season 3. It's an absolute privilege to have you. We would love to have you back if you'd be willing.
Absolutely. Anytime. Again, we just need to record some of our regular combos and just throw it into little clips.
I know.
Well, go check them out, everybody. You won't, I promise you will not regret it. And have a conversation with Dr. Jordan. It'll help you.
All right. Peace. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Bye.
Doctor.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you love our podcast as much as we do, do us a solid and subscribe to, share, rate, and review We're Not Blowing Hot Air, so more people get the chance to catch the powerful wellness hacks we're bringing to our world.
Today's episode is powered by Oxygen Plus. We're Not Blowing Hot Air is produced by Robert Burns and me, Lauren Carlstrom. Our editor and engineer is Katie Cox. Our assistant producer is Jordan Shilts. Keep breathing easy.